The cold November wind cut through the streets of downtown Chicago like a knife. It was the kind of night that made people walk faster, heads down, rushing to get wherever they needed to go. For Derek Johnson, it was just another Monday evening shift at Thompson Industries, one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the state. Derek had been working as a security guard there for almost 3 years now. It wasn't the career he dreamed about when he was younger, but it paid the bills. More importantly, it helped him support his younger sister through college. She was studying to become a nurse, and Derek was determined to make sure she graduated without drowning in debt like he had. At 32 years old, Derek often thought about the engineering degree he'd never finished. Life had other plans. His parents passed away in a car accident during his junior year, and suddenly he became responsible for his teenage sister. College had to wait. Then waiting turned into working full-time, and working full-time turned into years passing by. But Derek didn't complain much. He was grateful to have a steady job, even if it meant standing for 12 hours checking IDs and watching security cameras. The night shift was quiet most of the time, which gave him plenty of time to think. Maybe too much time. It was around 8 o'clock when Derek noticed something unusual near the employee entrance. An old man was struggling with grocery bags, moving slowly across the parking lot. The man looked to be in his 70s, wearing a worn-out jacket that had seen better days. His gray hair was messy and he seemed confused, like he wasn't quite sure where he was going. Derek watched through the window as one of the bags slipped from the old man's grip. Oranges and apples scattered across the cold pavement, rolling in different directions. The man bent down slowly, clearly in pain, trying to gather the fruit. Without thinking twice, Derek grabbed his coat and rushed outside. The cold air hit his face immediately, but he barely noticed. "Sir, let me help you with that," Derek said, already kneeling down to collect the scattered fruit. The old man looked up, surprised. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that comes from more than just physical exhaustion. "Oh, thank you, young man. I'm sorry I'm making such a mess." "Don't worry about it," Derek said with a warm smile, picking up the last orange. "Happens to the best of us. Are you okay? You seem a bit unsteady." The old man straightened up slowly, wincing slightly. "I just got out of the hospital today. Still getting my bearings, I suppose." Derek's concern deepened. This man shouldn't be out here alone in the cold, especially if he'd just been released from the hospital. "Do you have someone who can pick you up? Family or friends?" The old man shook his head. No, I'll be fine. Just need to get these groceries home." "Where's your car?" Derek asked, looking around the parking lot. I took a bus," the old man said quietly, almost embarrassed. "Couldn't drive myself today." Derek felt his heart sink. This elderly man, fresh out of the hospital, was planning to take a bus home in this freezing weather while carrying heavy grocery bags. That wasn't right. "Listen, sir, why don't you come inside for a bit? Warm up. I can call you a taxi service." "My treat," the old man hesitated. "I don't want to be any trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Derek insisted gently. "Please, I'd feel much better knowing you got home safely." After a moment, the old man nodded. "All right. Thank you. I'm Robert, by the way. Derek, nice to meet you, Robert. Come on, let's get you out of this cold." Derek carefully took the grocery bags and offered his arm to Robert, who accepted it gratefully. They walked slowly toward the building, and Derek noticed how Robert's hands were trembling slightly. It might have been the cold, or it might have been something else. Inside the security office, Derek settled Robert into his chair and turned up the small heater he kept nearby. He quickly made a cup of hot tea using the electric kettle he brought from home. "Here you go," Derek said, handing Robert the steaming cup. "This should help warm you up." Robert wrapped his hands around the cup, and Derek could see genuine gratitude in his eyes. "You're very kind. Most people just walk on by these days." Derek shrugged. "My mom always taught me to look out for people. She used to say that you never know what someone's going through, so always be kind." "Your mother was a wise woman," Robert said, taking a careful sip of tea. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Derek pulled out his phone and called a local taxi service he knew was reliable. While waiting, he made small talk with Robert, asking about nothing too personal, just enough to keep the old man's mind off whatever troubles he was carrying. Robert mentioned he'd been in the hospital for a few days. "Nothing too serious," he said, though Derek suspected he was downplaying it. The old man talked about missing his wife, who had passed away recently, and how hard it was to adjust to being alone after 50 years of marriage. Derek listened carefully, offering comfort where he could. He told Robert about his sister, about how proud he was of her progress in nursing school. He even mentioned his own abandoned dreams of becoming an engineer, though he made sure to emphasize that he didn't regret his choices. Family came first. "You're a good man, Derek," Robert said after a while. "Not many people would do what you're doing right now." "I'm just doing what anyone should do," Derek replied honestly. When the taxi arrived 20 minutes later, Derek helped Robert gather his groceries and walked him out to the waiting car. He gave the driver the address Robert had written down and slipped him an extra $20. "Make sure he gets inside safely," Derek told the driver, who nodded. Before getting into the taxi, Robert turned to Derek and extended his hand. Derek shook it firmly, feeling the older man's grip was stronger than he'd expected. "Young man, kindness like yours is rare in this world," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't forget what you did tonight. I promise you that." "Just take care of yourself, Robert," Derek said warmly. "And if you're ever around here again, stop by. I'll make you another cup of tea." Robert smiled for the first time that evening, a genuine smile that reached his tired eyes. "I just might do that." Derek watched the taxi pull away, its red taillights disappearing into the dark Chicago night. He stood there for a moment in the cold, his breath forming small clouds in the air, before heading back inside to finish his shift. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change his life forever. No idea that the struggling old man he'd just helped was about to turn his world completely upside down. For now, Derek just felt good about doing the right thing, and that was enough. 2 weeks passed since that cold November night, and Derek had almost forgotten about his encounter with Robert. Life went back to its usual routine. Clock in at 6 in the evening, monitor the security cameras, check employee badges, walk the perimeter a few times, and clock out at 6 in the morning. Day after day, night after night. Thompson Industries had been buzzing with tension lately. Derek heard the whispers everywhere. Employees talked nervously in the break rooms, their voices dropping when management walked by. The company was going through some kind of restructuring, and nobody knew exactly what that meant. But everyone knew it probably wasn't good news. The word layoffs floated through the hallways like an unwelcome ghost. People who had been working there for 10, 15, even 20 years were suddenly worried about their jobs. Derek tried not to think about it too much. What would worrying change? He just showed up, did his work, and hoped for the best. On a Monday morning, as Derek was getting ready to end his shift, something unusual happened. Patricia Chen, the Human Resources Director, walked into the security office. In 3 years of working there, she'd never once come to see him. Derek's stomach immediately tightened. "Good morning, Derek," she said, her expression neutral and professional. "Morning, Ms. Chen," Derek replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is everything okay? The CEO would like to see you in his office." "Right away." Derek felt his heart drop into his stomach. The CEO. He'd never even seen the CEO in person, let alone been summoned to his office. This couldn't be good. His mind raced through possibilities. Had he done something wrong? Was he being let go? Maybe helping Robert that night had violated some company policy he didn't know about. "Did I do something wrong?" Derek asked, unable to hide the worry in his voice. Patricia's face softened slightly. "Just come with me. Mr. Thompson is waiting." Derek followed her through the building, his work boots feeling heavier with each step. They took the elevator to the top floor, a place Derek had only heard about but never visited. The executive level was like a different world. Thick carpets, expensive artwork on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Chicago skyline bathed in morning light. His uniform felt out of place here. The security guard outfit that had always been just fine suddenly felt shabby and cheap surrounded by all this luxury. Other employees in crisp suits and designer dresses glanced at him as he passed, their expressions curious and slightly judgmental. Patricia led him down a long hallway to a set of massive wooden doors. She knocked twice, waited for a response, then opened the door and gestured for Derek to enter. "Mr. Johnson is here to see you, sir," she announced, then quietly closed the door behind Derek, leaving him alone in the vast office. Derek stood frozen near the entrance. The office was bigger than his entire apartment. Behind a massive oak desk sat a man in an expensive navy suit looking down at some papers. The morning sun streamed through the windows behind him, making it hard to see his face clearly at first. "Come in, Derek, have a seat," the man said, his voice warm and familiar. Derek's eyes adjusted to the light and his jaw literally dropped open. Sitting behind that desk in that expensive suit was Robert, the same elderly man he'd helped 2 weeks ago. The same person he'd made tea for in his tiny security office. The same man who'd been struggling with grocery bags and worn-out clothes. "Robert," Derek managed to say, completely confused. "Robert Thompson, actually," the old man said with a gentle smile, standing up and walking around the desk. "Though I appreciate that you knew me simply as Robert." Derek's mind was spinning. Thompson, as in Thompson Industries. As in the founder and owner of the entire company. He'd helped the CEO, no, not just the CEO, the man who owned the whole operation. I don't understand," Derek stammered. "You were at the hospital. You were taking the bus. You thought I was just some old man who needed help," Robert finished for him. "And you were absolutely right. That's exactly what I was that night." Robert gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Derek sat down slowly, still trying to process what was happening. His hands were sweating. His mouth felt dry. "Let me explain," Robert continued, settling into his own chair. 3 months ago, my wife of 50 years passed away. Her name was Helen. She was my everything." Derek saw the pain flash across Robert's face and recognized it. Real grief. The kind that doesn't fade just because you wear an expensive suit. "After she died, I fell apart," Robert admitted. "Ended up in the hospital with stress-induced health problems. My doctors, my kids, everyone was worried about me. But more than that, I was worried about this company." He gestured around the office. "I built Thompson Industries from nothing 40 years ago. Started on the factory floor, worked my way up. But lately I'd been hearing things. Complaints about the culture changing. Employees feeling undervalued. Management becoming cold and disconnected." Derek listened carefully, still not sure where this was going. "So I decided to do something unusual," Robert continued. "After leaving the hospital, I spent 3 months living quietly, anonymously. I wanted to see my company through fresh eyes, see how people really treated each other when they didn't know who was watching." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Derek's. "That night you helped me. I'd just been discharged. I was exhausted, confused, and honestly, I was testing something. Testing whether this company still had good people in it. People who cared about others without expecting anything in return." Derek felt a chill run down his spine. "Do you know how many Thompson Industries employees walked past me that night?" Robert asked. 7. 7 people saw an old man struggling and kept walking. 2 of them were senior managers. They looked right at me and kept going." He paused, letting that sink in. "But you, Derek, didn't hesitate for a second. You didn't know who I was. You had nothing to gain. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped. You gave up your break time, spent your own money on that taxi, and showed genuine compassion." Derek didn't know what to say. His throat felt tight with emotion. "I've been watching you these past 2 weeks," Robert continued, "reading reports about your work performance, talking to people who know you. Everyone says the same thing. You're reliable, honest, kind, and you treat everyone with respect, from the janitors to the managers." "Mr. Thompson, I just do my job," Derek said quietly. "No," Robert said firmly. "You do much more than that, and that's why I asked you here today." The old man stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "Derek, I'm going to offer you something. A position as my special assistant. I need someone I can trust. Someone with integrity to help me fix what's broken in this company." Derek's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Sir, I'm just a security guard. I don't have the qualifications for something like that." Robert turned back to face him, a knowing smile on his weathered face. 40 years ago, I was just a factory worker. Qualifications can be learned, Derek. Character cannot. I've seen your character, and that's worth more than any business degree." Derek sat there stunned as his entire world shifted beneath him. The impossible was happening. A simple act of kindness had just opened a door he never knew existed. Derek sat in his small apartment that evening, still wearing his security uniform, staring at the business card Robert Thompson had given him. Special assistant to the CEO. The words felt strange, almost fictional. Just this morning, he'd been checking employee badges at the front entrance. Now he was being offered a position that probably came with an office, a real salary, and responsibilities he couldn't even imagine. His younger sister, Keisha, walked into the living room with 2 cups of coffee. She was still in her nursing scrubs from her clinical rotation at the hospital. Even exhausted from a long day, her eyes were bright with excitement. "So are you going to tell me what happened, or are you just going to sit there looking like you've seen a ghost?" she asked, handing him a cup. Derek took a deep breath and told her everything. The encounter with Robert 2 weeks ago, the shocking revelation this morning, the job offer that seemed too good to be true. As he spoke, Keisha's eyes grew wider and wider. "Derek, this is incredible," she exclaimed when he finished. "Do you know what this means? This could change everything for you. Or it could be a disaster," Derek said quietly. "Keisha, I don't know anything about corporate management. I have an unfinished engineering degree and 3 years of security guard experience. What business do I have being anyone's special assistant?" Keisha set down her coffee and looked at him seriously. "Remember what you told me when Mom and Dad died? When I wanted to drop out of school and get a job?" Derek remembered. It was one of the hardest conversations they'd ever had. "You told me that sometimes life gives you chances and you have to be brave enough to take them." Keisha continued. "You told me not to let fear make my decisions. Now I'm telling you the same thing." "That was different," Derek protested. "No, it wasn't," she said firmly. "You've spent the last 10 years putting me first, making sure I had everything I needed. You gave up your own dreams for me. Maybe this is life giving you a chance to dream again." Derek felt a lump forming in his throat. "What if I fail? What if you succeed?" Keisha countered. "Derek, this man didn't offer you this job because he felt sorry for you. He offered it because he saw something in you. Maybe it's time you saw it too." The next morning, Derek called Robert Thompson and accepted the position. They agreed on a 6-month trial period. If it didn't work out, Robert promised there would be no hard feelings and Derek could return to his security position if he wanted. It was the safety net Derek needed to take the leap. His first day in the new role was both exciting and terrifying. Patricia Chen from HR gave him a quick tour of the executive floor, showed him to his new office, which was small but had an actual window, and handed him a stack of orientation materials. "Mr. Thompson wants you to spend the first week just observing," she explained. "Sit in on meetings, talk to people from different departments, get a feel for how things work." It sounded simple enough. It wasn't. By the end of his first day, Derek realized he'd walked into something much more complicated than he'd imagined. The atmosphere on the executive floor was cold, almost hostile. People smiled at him, but the smiles didn't reach their eyes. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. He heard whispers behind his back. The worst part was dealing with Michael Hartley, the chief operating officer. Hartley was a tall man in his early 50s with silver hair and expensive suits that probably cost more than Derek's monthly rent. He'd been with Thompson Industries for 15 years and was widely considered to be Robert's right-hand man. During Derek's first executive meeting, Hartley made his feelings clear. They were discussing quarterly reports when Robert asked Derek for his initial impressions of the company. "I'm still learning, sir," Derek said carefully, "but I'm looking forward to understanding how everything works together." Hartley leaned back in his chair, a thin smile on his face. "Well, that should be interesting. Most of us spent years in business school and decades in the industry to understand how everything works, but I'm sure 3 years of checking badges gives you unique insights." The room went silent. Everyone looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Derek felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression neutral. Robert's voice cut through the tension. "Michael, Derek is here because I asked him to be here. I expect everyone to treat him with the same respect you'd show any other executive. Are we clear?" "Of course, Robert," Hartley said smoothly, but his eyes told a different story. After the meeting, an older woman named Claire approached Derek in the hallway. She was the chief financial officer and had kind eyes behind her glasses. "Don't let Michael get to you," she said quietly. "He's upset because he thought he was being groomed to take over when Robert retires. Your sudden appearance has him worried." "I'm not here to take anyone's job," Derek said honestly. "I know that," Claire replied, "but Michael doesn't see it that way. Just watch your back around him." Over the next few weeks, Derek threw himself into learning everything he could. He arrived early, stayed late, and filled notebook after notebook with information. Robert had given him a special assignment: talk to employees at every level of the company and find out what was really going on. So Derek did something unusual. Instead of staying on the executive floor, he went back downstairs. He talked to the factory workers during their breaks. He had lunch with administrative assistants. He spent time with the maintenance crew, the shipping department, the customer service team. What he discovered disturbed him. There was a massive disconnect between upper management and everyone else. Workers talked about safety concerns that were being ignored. People mentioned discrimination in promotions, Always the same folks getting moved up while others were overlooked. Several employees quietly shared stories about complaints that disappeared into thin air, never addressed. The company that Robert Thompson had built on values of fairness and respect had drifted far from those ideals. The question was, did anyone in leadership know? Or worse, did they know and not care? Derek compiled everything into a detailed report. He included quotes from employees, though he kept their names anonymous to protect them. He documented specific incidents and patterns. He highlighted areas where the company was failing its workers. When he presented the report to Robert in his office, the old man read through it slowly, his expression growing more troubled with each page. "This is worse than I thought," Robert said finally. "I can provide more details if you need them," Derek offered. "No, this is thorough." "Excellent work, Derek." Robert looked up at him. "I want you to present this to the full executive board next week." Derek felt his stomach drop. "Sir, are you sure? This is pretty critical of current management practices. Some of them won't like it, I'm certain," Robert said firmly. "This is exactly why you're here. We need fresh eyes, honest assessment, and someone brave enough to tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable." As Derek left Robert's office, he passed Michael Hartley in the hallway. The COO's expression was cold, calculating. "I hear you've been spending a lot of time with the hourly workers," Hartley said. "Feeling nostalgic for your security guard days?" "Just doing my job," Derek replied evenly. "Your job," Hartley repeated with a slight smile. "Yes, well, we'll see how long that lasts." Derek kept walking, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a powerful enemy. He'd been given an opportunity to make real change, but change always came with resistance. The question was whether he had the strength to push through it. That night, lying in bed, Derek thought about his mother's words that Robert had mentioned. "Be kind because you never know what someone is going through." He'd been kind to an old man struggling with groceries, and it had changed his life. Now he had a chance to be kind to hundreds of employees who needed someone to listen, someone to care, someone to fight for them. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but Derek had never backed down from doing what was right. He wasn't about to start now. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Derek stood at the front, his presentation loaded on the screen behind him, facing 12 executives who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Robert sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Michael Hartley sat directly across from Derek, arms crossed, a slight smirk playing at his lips. Derek's hands were sweating, but his voice was steady as he began. "Thank you all for your time today. Over the past month, I've conducted over 100 interviews with employees across all departments and levels. What I found reveals some serious concerns we need to address." He clicked to the first slide showing statistics about employee satisfaction. The numbers weren't good. Morale was at an all-time low. Turnover rates had increased by 40% in the last 2 years. "These numbers tell us something is wrong," Derek continued. "But the real story is in what employees are saying." He shared anonymized quotes. Stories about workers being pressured to meet impossible quotas, safety equipment that hadn't been replaced in years, managers who ignored concerns and complaints, a culture where speaking up meant getting fired. 5 minutes into his presentation, Hartley interrupted. "I'm sorry, but where exactly did you get this information? These are serious allegations." "From direct interviews with employees," Derek replied calmly. "All documented and verified." "Verified by whom?" Hartley pressed. "You're not trained in corporate research methodology. For all we know, you talked to a few disgruntled workers who have axes to grind." "Michael, let him finish," Robert said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Derek continued, presenting his findings about discriminatory promotion practices. Over the past 3 years, upper management positions had gone almost exclusively to people who fit a certain profile, while equally qualified candidates from diverse backgrounds were consistently passed over. Then he showed the financial data. Departments that cut corners on safety and employee welfare showed short-term profit increases, but long-term productivity losses. High turnover was costing the company millions in training and recruitment. "What I'm proposing," Derek said, moving to his recommendation slide, "is a complete cultural reset. Better wages for hourly workers, investment in safety equipment and training, a transparent promotion system with clear criteria, an anonymous reporting system for complaints, and a restructuring of middle management to ensure accountability." The room erupted. 3 executives started talking at once. Hartley's voice rose above the others. "This is ridiculous," he said, standing up. You want us to pour money into workers who should just be grateful they have jobs? In this economy? Do you have any idea what that would do to our profit margins? I do, actually, Derek said, clicking to his financial projections. Short term, we'd see about a 5% decrease in quarterly profits. Long term, based on industry studies, we'd see increased productivity, lower turnover costs, and stronger company loyalty. Within 2 years, we'd be more profitable than we are now. Industry studies, Hartley scoffed. This isn't theory. This is the real world. Robert, surely you can't be considering this. All eyes turned to Robert. The old man had been silent throughout the presentation, just listening. Now he leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. Derek has given us a lot to think about, Robert said. I want everyone to review his full report. We'll reconvene next week to discuss implementation. Hartley's face went red. Implementation? Robert, with all due respect, this is corporate suicide. We can't just overhaul everything because a security guard spent a few weeks playing detective. That's enough, Michael, Robert said, his voice sharp now. The meeting ended badly. As people filed out, Derek could feel their resentment like a physical weight. Only Claire, the CFO, gave him a small, encouraging nod. Over the next few days, Derek felt the backlash. His suggestions were mocked in executive emails that were accidentally copied to him. Someone left a security guard uniform in his office with a note saying, "In case you want your old job back." The hostility wasn't even subtle anymore. But Derek kept digging, kept investigating. Something felt wrong. The numbers in some of Hartley's reports didn't quite add up. Derek wasn't an accountant, but he'd learned enough about the company finances to spot inconsistencies. He spent late nights going through files, comparing reports. What he found made his blood run cold. Safety incidents that had been reported by floor supervisors somehow never made it into the official company records. Complaints about equipment failures were documented at the department level, but disappeared before reaching executive review. Someone was hiding problems, cooking the books just enough to make everything look better than it was, and all the trails led back to Hartley's office. Derek faced an impossible choice. If he was wrong, he'd look like he was making up accusations against a respected executive because of their earlier conflicts. If he was right but couldn't prove it conclusively, Hartley could destroy him. He thought about staying silent. It would be easier, safer. He could present his cultural recommendations, hope some of them got implemented, and keep his head down. But then he thought about the workers he'd talked to. The woman who'd been injured because safety guards had been removed from machinery to speed up production. The man who'd reported harassment and been transferred to night shift in retaliation. The single mother who was passed over for promotion 5 times while less experienced people moved up. Derek had been given this opportunity for a reason. Not just to observe and report, but to actually make a difference. If he backed down now, what was it all for? He made copies of everything he'd found and requested a private meeting with Robert. When he arrived at Robert's office, he was surprised to find Claire there too. I asked Claire to join us, Robert explained. She's been with this company 20 years and I trust her judgment completely. Derek laid out everything he'd discovered. The missing safety reports, the hidden complaints, the pattern of information being filtered and sanitized before reaching the executive board. He showed them the documentation, the inconsistencies, the trail that led to Hartley. Claire examined the financial documents carefully, her expression growing darker. Robert, I hate to say this, but Derek's right. These numbers have been manipulated. Not drastically enough to be illegal, but enough to hide significant problems. Robert looked older suddenly, tired. Michael has been with me for 15 years. I trusted him to keep this company running while I was dealing with Helen's death. I know this is hard, sir, Derek said quietly, but if we don't address this, we're failing everyone who works here. Robert stood and walked to his window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned back to them. Derek, I want you to compile everything into a complete report. Every document, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence. Claire, I need you to conduct an independent audit of the last 3 years of safety reports and HR complaints. What are you going to do? Derek asked. Robert's jaw tightened. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. It's time to clean house. That evening, as Derek was leaving the office, he ran into Hartley in the parking garage. The COO's expression was dangerous. You think you're so smart, Hartley said, stepping closer. You think because Robert took a liking to you, you can waltz in here and destroy everything I've built? I'm not trying to destroy anything, Derek said, holding his ground. I'm trying to fix what's broken. You're trying to replace me, Hartley hissed. A nobody with delusions of grandeur. But let me tell you something. I have allies on the board. I have 15 years of loyalty. You have nothing but Robert's sentimentality. I have the truth, Derek said simply. Hartley laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth? In the corporate world, the truth is whatever people with power say it is. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way. Derek watched Hartley walk away, and despite his brave words, fear gripped his chest. He'd just declared war on one of the most powerful people in the company. The emergency board meeting was in 3 days. Whatever happened next would determine not just Derek's future, but the future of everyone working at Thompson Industries. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning. Derek barely slept the night before. He kept going over his evidence, making sure every detail was airtight. Keisha had stayed up with him until midnight, helping him organize documents and telling him to breathe whenever his anxiety spiked. "You've got this," she'd said before heading to bed. "You didn't come this far just to back down now." Derek arrived at the office an hour early. The boardroom was on the top floor, even more impressive than Robert's office. A massive table made of dark wood dominated the room, surrounded by leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Chicago. He set up his presentation, checked it twice, then sat down to wait. His heart was pounding so hard he wondered if everyone would be able to hear it. Board members started arriving at 8:45. There were 12 of them, including Robert. These were the people who made the real decisions about Thompson Industries. CEOs from other companies, investors, longtime business partners. They looked at Derek with curiosity and, in some cases, barely concealed skepticism. Hartley arrived exactly at 9, accompanied by 2 other executives who'd been openly hostile to Derek's recommendations. He looked confident, relaxed even. He nodded pleasantly at Derek as if they were old friends. Robert called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have serious matters to discuss today that affect the future of this company. Derek, the floor is yours." Derek stood up, and for a split second his mind went blank. Then he thought about all the people he'd interviewed. The factory worker with 3 kids who couldn't afford to lose his job. The young woman who'd been harassed and ignored. The maintenance crew working with faulty equipment. He was speaking for them. His voice came out stronger than he expected. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to present evidence of serious misconduct within our executive leadership, specifically concerning safety violations, suppressed employee complaints, and financial misrepresentation." The room went dead silent. Derek presented everything methodically. He showed the side-by-side comparison of safety reports from the factory floor versus what had been reported to the board. Incidents had been downplayed or omitted entirely. He displayed the internal complaints about discrimination and harassment that had been marked as resolved without any actual investigation. Then he brought up the financial data, the numbers that had been tweaked just enough to hide the real cost of the company's problems. Claire had helped him prepare this section, and her audit had uncovered even more than Derek had initially found. These documents show a pattern of information being filtered and manipulated before reaching this board, Derek said. "You've been making decisions based on incomplete and sometimes false information." "This is outrageous," Hartley interrupted, standing up. "Robert, this is a witch hunt. This man has been trying to undermine me since day 1 because he wants my position." "Michael, sit down," Robert said quietly. "I will not sit down while I'm being accused of fraud by someone who was checking IDs 6 months ago." "The documents speak for themselves," Claire interjected, her voice calm but firm. "I've conducted an independent audit. Everything Derek is presenting is verifiable. The paper trail leads directly to your office, Michael." Hartley's confident expression finally cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." Robert was absent for months. The board was demanding results. "I did what I had to do to keep this company profitable." "By hiding safety violations?" one of the board members asked, her voice sharp. "By suppressing employee complaints?" "By making tough decisions," Hartley shot back. "Something none of you have to do from your comfortable board positions." Robert stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 40 years of building a company from nothing. "Michael, I trusted you. I trusted you to uphold the values this company was founded on. Instead, you turned it into exactly the kind of corporation I never wanted it to become." "Robert, please," Hartley said. and for the first time, Derek heard desperation in his voice. "I've given 15 years to this company." "I know," Robert said, and he actually sounded sad. "But that doesn't excuse what you've done. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Your executive privileges are revoked, and legal counsel will be reviewing everything to determine if further action is necessary." Hartley looked around the room, searching for allies. He found none. The other executives who'd supported him suddenly seemed very interested in the documents in front of them. "You're making a mistake," Hartley said, but his voice had lost its power. "This company needs people who understand that sometimes you have to compromise your ideals to survive." "No," Robert said firmly. "This company needs people who understand that your ideals are the only thing worth protecting. Everything else is just numbers on a page." Security escorted Hartley from the building. Derek felt no satisfaction in watching him leave, only a deep exhaustion and a strange sense of relief. The board spent the next 3 hours discussing Derek's recommendations. With Hartley gone and the truth laid bare, resistance crumbled. They approved almost everything Derek had proposed. Better wages, safety upgrades, a complete overhaul of the HR complaint system, an independent oversight committee. As the meeting was wrapping up, Robert stood again. "There's one more matter to discuss. After much consideration, I've decided it's time for me to step back from daily operations. I'll remain as chairman of the board, but this company needs new leadership." Derek's stomach dropped. He knew what was coming, and he still wasn't ready for it. "I'm naming Derek Johnson as the new CEO of Thompson Industries, effective in 3 months. I'll work closely with him during the transition to ensure he has everything he needs to succeed." The room erupted in murmurs. Derek sat frozen, unable to process what he'd just heard. A board member raised her hand. "Robert, with all respect, Derek has only been in management for 6 months. This seems premature." "6 months ago, I was a grieving widower who'd lost touch with the company I built," Robert replied. "Derek didn't just show me kindness when I needed it. He showed me that character, courage, and compassion are more important than years of experience. He risked everything to do what was right. That's the kind of leader this company needs." After the meeting, Derek found himself alone with Robert in his office. "Sir, I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. Robert smiled. "I wasn't ready when I started either. Nobody ever is. But I'll be here to guide you. And you have good people around you like Claire. More importantly, you have something that can't be taught. You care about people, not just profits." "I'm scared," Derek said honestly. "Good," Robert replied. "The day you stop being scared is the day you stop caring about the responsibility you carry." 6 months later, Derek sat in what was now his office, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The changes they'd implemented were working. Employee satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvement. Productivity was up. The company culture was transforming. He'd also started a scholarship program for employees and their families. Full tuition for anyone who wanted to finish their education. Keisha had been the first to suggest it, and Derek loved the symmetry of it. That afternoon, as Derek was reviewing reports, his assistant told him there was a situation at the front entrance. A new security guard needed guidance on handling a visitor. Derek smiled and headed downstairs. When he arrived, he saw the young guard looking stressed, trying to help an elderly woman who seemed confused about which building she needed. Derek watched for a moment as the guard patiently explained directions, offered to call someone for her, and made sure she was okay before she left. The guard had no idea the CEO was watching. "What's your name?" Derek asked, approaching him. The guard looked startled. "Trevor, sir." "I'm sorry, was I away from my post too long?" "No, Trevor," Derek said warmly. "You were doing exactly what you should be doing. Keep that up. This company needs people like you." As Derek walked back to the elevator, he thought about that cold November night that had changed everything. He'd helped someone simply because it was the right thing to do. He'd had no idea it would lead here. The truth was, kindness wasn't a strategy for success. It wasn't a calculated move to get ahead. But when you treated people with dignity and respect, when you stood up for what was right even when it was hard, sometimes the universe found ways to reward that. Derek had learned that the most important qualification for leadership wasn't on any resume. It was the willingness to see people's struggles and do something about them, to use whatever power you had to make things better. Not just for yourself, but for everyone. He'd been given an incredible opportunity, and he was determined to spend every day honoring the values that got him here. Because in the end, success wasn't measured by titles or salaries. It was measured by how many lives you touched, how many people you helped, and whether you stayed true to yourself along the way. And on that measure, Derek Johnson knew he was finally becoming the person his mother had raised him to be.